if everybody could keep muted unless they're actually speaking, and use the chat bar, the meeting chat, to indicate if you have comments or questions, or to use the little raising your hand piece, and then wait for Pauline to actually invite you to make your comment or give your question in. And I'm just seen that Karen has just also noted that, as I did say that we were technically meeting in public, actually we've got Becky Leonard who's observing, who's one of our team, and is also making some notes herself. So I think that's all I need to say at this stage, and I'll hand you across to Pauline as lead governor, who will chair us through the meeting. Over to you, Pauline.
Thank you, Paul. Can I first, before we go into the meeting, can I just take a moment to just make our condolences noted for one of our fellow governors. I think you all received the notification about our fellow governor, Tracy, who obviously, you know, we send our condolences from the whole of the Council of Governors, and really, you know, wish her, I don't know really how to say, we can't wish her well, we wish her all the best in her circumstances. I think everybody that I've spoken to has said, how do we send a card? You know, I'll go back to speak to Sam about that in due course. But, you know, just to note on this meeting that I think everybody is thinking about it. And I know Daniel is in direct contact with her at some point. Right, to go on with the meeting, are there any questions from the public? I know we did put that out, and I didn't know whether there were any that had come back. Are there any, Karen or Sam, either or?
Not that I'm aware of, Pauline, no.
Okay, thank you.
Pauline, sorry, can I just going back, I have just put a note in the chat bar. With regards to Tracy, I have sent her a condolence card on behalf of you all and passed on, in fact, actually printed out some of the messages that I received from governors.
Okay, thank you, Karen. That's really, really appreciated. Thank you very much. Well, apologies, really. Do we have apologies? Can't hear you, Sam.
Sorry, Pauline, I had my voice off. I'll take them as noted, and we'll get them from this chat as well. Any extras? Okay.
Okay. While I've got you, are there any declarations of interest other than what's
only what's noted? So okay, yeah.
Thank you. Right, I just want to go into the draft minutes. I think we've all had them, so I would like to ask you to let me know if anybody has got any comments that they would like to make on the minutes, please. I can't see anybody's hand coming up. Oh, Don, I've got Don. Okay, Don, what would you like to recorded?
No. It's just it's a fair reflection, but I wanted to ask a question about the transgender community piece.
Okay.
That was made note of in there about the engagement work that's carried out and supported by Sophie. I have a contact up in Liverpool that I did a college course with, that was trying to do some really big changing aspects up in the Liverpool area to get the transgender element put across to a wider community and into her local trust, so that there was a wider understanding. And I didn't know whether or not whether or not we could get the two people linked up, Think to Speak and my contacts that's doing exactly the same great work up in Liverpool, because some of the barriers and some of the engagement with her local trust really took some massive efforts to break down so that there was some understanding. So it was just to bring up that point that I do have a contact, but I don't know how to kind of make those two things meet up so that we can kind of use the resource that the person I know has.
I think that's really good, John, and I think Sam will be the one that, if you connect back in with Sam will be able to connect you with Sophie and formulate that link. And I can see Paul's nodding his head because I know he's very keen to keep that link. You know, were you at the I can't say it, the conference earlier in the year in February, the Love Conference? Don't know whether you were.
I wasn't, no.
No, and it was Think to Speak were actually on the podium and did a really excellent presentation.
Yes.
And I know that they are real advocates for delivering and linking with LPFT. So I know Sophie will be supportive, etc. So I think the link will be back to Sam. So, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll chat with Sam afterwards.
Yeah.
And get that sorted out. Thanks a lot.
Anybody else got any comments with regard to? I can't see any other hands coming up, unless anybody else can. I have got a couple of. They are, excuse me, they're minor ones with spelling mistakes, but they're nothing that I can't chat to Sam about. And the only one that I was going to really ask about was, excuse me, was really with the managed care network. Maybe, I know we've got Linda here, but it was more about, right at the end, it's got about first reports from these visits would be due on the 10th of January. Now, I know we didn't meet in March, so we wouldn't have got those reports. But it's more about what's happened really in that arena of managed care network. Will you be able to update us, Linda, when you do your piece? I don't know, I know you're here, but I can't.
Yes, Pauline, I can update you. Just let me know when you would like that to happen.
Yeah, I think as long as I've noted it here, I think when you do your piece, I think if you can update us with what's happening within that managed care network, the whole arena around COVID, that would be really good. And I think Sarah would be happy if we updated her name on these minutes, Sam. So I think that I'm quite happy with those once they're done. Okay. Schedule of actions. The only one we've got there is the in progress. Do you want to give us an update on that, Sam?
Yes, just bear with me a second. Which one is it, Pauline?
It's just the first one on the iLog. It's just that we've only got one on there, and it's the amber status on item 1920. It was still in the minutes from the last one, and it's the demographics from Ian Baldum regarding some percentages.
Yeah, it's taken a bit of time to get a response for that because it's taken several stages in a process. Okay. But we have got the details. It's just we're formatting it currently, so it should be with everybody soon.
Okay, so that'll come to. Will it come to the next?
It can do, but I can update beforehand because obviously the next meeting is 3 months away. So as soon as I've got the information, I can update the council beforehand.
Okay, fabulous. And so on to the next, which is terms of reference, and this was deferred from the March meeting. So I did actually ask Sam to ask a question on behalf of the committee before we got here today. And we did have a reply back from Karen. Thank you very much, Karen.
Okay.
The question really was why were Ned's not on the invite, so to speak? So one on the membership, you know, they are there to say that they can come into in attendance, but they're not actually on the membership. So I asked the question as to why, and thank you, Karen. I got an answer. I mean, would you like to update us on that answer, Karen?
Yeah, certainly, Pauline.
Thank you.
My point was that the representation committee was established initially as a forum for governors to meet, and it was agreed that it would be held in public. As it is a meeting where you are held accountable by your constituent members. That was the reason for actually opening it up to members of the public to observe or attend. So as one of your statutory responsibilities, it is to be held to account by the membership. The activity that you carry out on a regular basis is not something that the non-executive directors hold you to account on. The non-executive directors are more than welcome to attend, and it is written into the terms of reference that obviously anybody will be welcome, and that includes any trust officer or member of the public. And so to specifically include them as members is not particularly appropriate. The reason that the trust chair and the senior independent non-exec director are actually members and other trust officers is purely to provide you with support during the meeting in transacting your business. So that's the theoretical answer, but as I say, there is no reason why non-exec directors can't attend. The minutes of this meeting are presented to every Council of Governors meeting, and as you all know, those meetings are well attended by all of the non-exec directors, so they do have the opportunity to see the business and the activity that you're conducting throughout the year via this committee. And if they have any queries or questions about that, then obviously that's their opportunity to ask about that. But we don't feel that it's necessarily appropriate for them to be specifically listed as members.
Okay, thank you. Do any of my fellow governors want to respond in any way to that? Anybody have an opinion? Okay. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. So I will open this up to these are draft terms of reference. So do any of the other governors have any comments or anything around these draft terms before, you know, we agree them? I'm not getting any hands up. Okay, so I have got a couple that, because of the fact that we've moved, obviously we've missed a meeting here. So in the reporting aspect, Karen, it says the first report shall be 6 months after the establishment of the committee and shall form part of the review of the committee's effectiveness. Is there a caveat to that? Because obviously we've missed one meeting.
I think that the reason, obviously, that the meeting's been missed is extenuating circumstances, Pauline, and we wouldn't ordinarily anticipate that this would have happened.
No.
So I think on this occasion, I think it would be perfectly reasonable to defer that 6 monthly report and actually take an annual report on this occasion. And moving forward, when hopefully things are back to new normal, then we obviously can start to take a 6 monthly report. But I think that there clearly isn't enough business to report on a 6 monthly basis this year.
No, thank you. So we can alter that aspect of it accordingly.
I don't necessarily think it warrants necessarily formally amending the terms of reference. I think that, as I say, this is a a one-off extenuating circumstance, Pauline, and I think if we were to change it just for this occasion, then we could put something in to facilitate this arising in the future on any occasion, but I think that if we have an understanding and it's formally minuted that actually that was the agreement, I think that the terms of reference are fit and proper.
Yeah, I mean, it says on the back at number 8 that it will review the effectiveness at least annually. So that does effectively cover it.
I think that's slightly different. I think the review of the committee is actually referring to my understanding, and I apologise that actually I don't normally attend this meeting, but my understanding is that this review is about the effectiveness is actually akin to carrying out some sort of assessment or appraisal, which we haven't done previously, but I think that's slightly different. There's a subtle difference between that and reporting, and I think the point you make about the reporting is that a formal report will be written as opposed to the effectiveness, which will be assessed on an annual basis.
Okay, I think so long as we have clarity, I'm quite happy for it to go through. And there's only one other thing that it's not to change, or it's just for reference really, and possibly to discuss as we go forward, is that because we have a lot of new governors in, I've highlighted the group of 1,000, and Sam, perhaps, I don't know whether many of our new governors might know what and why.
Yes, that's a good point actually, Pauline. Yeah, the group of 1,000 was a group of individuals that wanted to be a little bit more involved than just receiving a Better Together magazine or an e-newsletter. In recent years, we've not had so much recruitment to it. The group still exists. However, we do tend to communicate more with members online through different activity groups. So the group does still exist, but it is for people to join if they want to take part in focus groups and consultations and things like that. And it does allow our offline members to be able to still be involved because we have a mixture in that group of people who are offline and people who are online. So that group really is for that reason, if that helps.
It does. I know we used to have one particular governor that used to drive it forward.
Yes, many years ago we did. I think it was in its creation that it was, sort of drove forward. Like I say, the group is still there and it is still available for anything that might occur that we want to engage. But we do tend to use that as well as a number of other groups that are online to be able to target people and their interests a bit more focused, in a more focused way, rather than just the group of 1,000. So we tend to use that group as well as others.
Okay, thank you. Andy, would you like to come in? You've got a question?
Yeah, it's just a minor observation, really. When I read documents like these, I try and think, if my dad read it, would he understand it? And there's one line in it that I don't understand, which is under section 2 authority, the first sentence: the committee is authorised by the Council of Governors to consider the general duty of the Council of Governors to represent the membership and the wider public. And I don't think I really know what that means. I mean, people who are more immersed in the Council of Governors probably will, but if I'm a member of the public trying to immerse myself in the work of the Council of Governors, I might think I don't get it. I'd say it's just an observation on my part.
Would you like me to try and add some clarity to that? Might not. The words are as they are, Andy. However, in terms of the structure and how things work, what it's saying is that as the Council of Governors is the constituted body which represents the membership and the wider public, the Council of Governors has established this committee and deemed it appropriate as a forum in which it can carry out its more general day-to-day business from a activity basis in terms of representing the membership and the wider public throughout the year, rather than just waiting for formal Council of Governors meetings. But because it is the Council of Governors that is constituted within the Trust Constitution and not this committee, that has to be specified.
Okay, thank you. I understand it. I understand it now. You've explained it to me, so that's helpful. Thanks.
In some ways, Andy, it's probably more conversational than the Council of Governors. I think I would add. Paul, you can add to it as well. You're saying? I can't hear you.
Always happens at least once in a meeting, doesn't it? I was just having a quick glance at our trust website, and under the tab for Council of Governors, there's actually a much more kind of publicly oriented description of what this committee actually does and its role. So that I think the document itself is setting out terms of reference as a formal document, but we describe it in a much more kind of public oriented way on the website. So that might be worth a look at, Andy. And then if you still think that actually that's not plain English enough, that would be a good piece to feedback on.
No, that's helpful, Paul. Thank you. And I haven't looked at that bit on the website, so I will.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. You still have your hand up, Andy. Right, so we have to agree this now, and we have to make a decision. So have we? I think a few people have put it in the chat that they've agreed it. So can you see all of those, Karen?
Yes, I can, Pauline. Thank you. Can I just query on Millie's comment? She has, going back to the reporting conversation. She has suggested that we might want to just add some clarity about what happens in extenuating circumstances. Quite happy to draft a line to just put in there, just as a catch-all, in the worst case scenario that we find ourselves in a similar situation. It's to be hoped we don't, if that's what everybody would like.
Yeah, I think it would just clarify it, wouldn't it? And it keeps everybody happy.
I think if we say something to the effect that in the event that insufficient number of meetings have taken place within that 6 months, that the committee acknowledge that a 6-monthly report will be incorporated or deferred and incorporated into an annual report. Yeah. Words to that effect.
Yeah. John, you've got your hand up.
It's something that kind of we've discussed in our chat by the caller, and it's about the membership. Now, in the discussion, this membership could be about membership to the council, membership as a member of the public, so a membership of the trust. So can we just have some clarification as to what the membership is for? Because it just in that authority to oversee and scrutinise the recruitment and management of the membership. Membership of what? To the trust or to the council?
Which you number?
So this is,
you're talking of number 4.
No, paragraph 2. But just the whole thing throughout. We have membership to lots of different things within the trust. It isn't just about membership to the council. It isn't just membership to the trust. Where are we saying that this membership and the scrutinisation and the management of it? Where do we lie with the membership? Because we as governors are on behalf of our constituents who are members of the trust, hopefully. but are we talking that we're talking about the membership to the council? So it was just about clarification as to membership of
I get
what.
it. I get it, because when you go over the page to number 4, you
Yeah.
have got the word membership as an item, and so that's membership of the group. So I get what you're saying. You do need clarification.
It's just an understanding of what are we looking at our membership to? And what are we as governors looking and scrutinising?
Yeah,
I see.
in here, so you're right, because in 315 it does say group of 1,000 and the wider membership.
Yeah.
So I think probably have you got that, Karen? You've got your hand up now.
Just wanted to clarify that in section 2, that's a general section regarding the authority of this committee.
Yep.
And actually reference to membership is referring to membership of the trust, not membership of this committee. So section 4 is the very specific section about the membership of this committee, and very separate to the section 2 on authority, which sets out the purpose, if you like, of this committee and what it is able and authorised to do.
Okay. It just, when you then hit into roles and responsibilities and recruitment and management of the membership.
I think, Karen, can we, for clarity and just so that there is no I can't say the word ambiguity.
Yeah.
You know, if we put in there that first one, that the management of the membership of the trust, and then where the roles and responsibilities are recruitment and management of the membership.
As Millie's pointing out there, you could just put it's either trust membership or it's committee membership, and if
we go through that, then I think we are clear for everybody. And I think, as Andy pointed out, if it's his dad reading it, he's really clear.
And that's it.
There is no ambiguity. I can't say that word even.
And I suffer a lot with this when we're having discussions with the Americans, because at the moment there's a discussion about bleach, but bleach to an American isn't the same bleach as we discuss in the UK. So we just need to make sure that, as you say, there's no ambiguity in the language used, so that it's clarified. That was all. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think there's a point well made there. The fact that if we make it simple, then it's there in black and white.
Happy to make those amendments, Pauline. Can I just ask, is the committee happy for those amendments to be made and passed through via Pauline to authorise remotely or virtually, or would you like them to formally come back to the committee at a future meeting? The review, or they'll be presented to the Council of Governors for approval in the full suite of committee membership terms of reference in January. So we have got time, but if you could just clarify how you want to process those changes.
I've got down content for PM to review. PM is fine with me.
Okay.
Most of them are coming up. So
we'll email through to you, Pauline.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to do that on your behalf. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for bringing that up. And we will, as I say, as Karen stated, it will come back to Council of Governors for full ratification. So thank you for that. Thank you, Karen. Sam, Governor and Membership Work Plan.
Okay, thank you, Pauline. Okay, so this is the Governor Membership Work Plan between June and October 2020, the report itself is split into 3 parts. So the first bit is about, you know, the meeting and the training that the governor and membership plan to take part in. The second part is about the elections that are coming up, for the staff elections and the by-elected seats for public. And then the third part of the section is about its retrospective, in the sense that we look back on all the membership click emails that went out throughout that quarter in terms of communicating to our wider trust membership. So if I could take the first section, we've got on there the meetings that are in public, as well as our new Cuppa by the Cooler Microsoft Team catch-ups, which have been set up for governors in the event that there are no physical meetings at the moment, which has proved really successful. And I'm sure that the governors will chip in and give some feedback there briefly. So yes, it's basically a social environment in which the governors can, you know, informally chat on the Cuppa by the Cooler, and it's just a way of us catching up online, as opposed to the formal meetings. The next section is the elections, and it's important to say that we are going to start our nominations opening on the 1st of July, which is Wednesday, and all of our staff governors have already been communicated about those elections. We will be going forward with that in terms of collating some interest from other staff as well. Our nominations deadline is on Wednesday the 29th of July, so they've got until then. So the nominations haven't opened yet. So yes, we are going to be going through that. If there's any questions about the elections at the moment, did you want to ask them?
Yes, yeah. Anybody got questions? I can't see any hands up at the moment.
No, Pauline, I need to go sidebar with you and discuss this, because it's not for this meeting. It's just a lack of understanding on my part, but that's a separate meeting for you and I to have a chat about. Who's making the proof? Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it, Pauline. I just outside of this, I just need to chat with you about the elections.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so there's no questions about the elections at all.
I just got his hand up as well.
I was just wondering, Sam, how will the process differ? Is it going to be mostly online based, or is it going to be more a mix of the two?
Well, it is going to be online based, which is the lucky thing about it, because the actual staff elections run online anyway, so it will be easier to be able to do that online for staff. The only sort of challenge that we've got is obviously the public by-elections, which we will be doing online anyway, but in terms of interest and things, we'll be doing that online, and also through the actual nomination phase we'll be sending online invites. So it's all going out online. There'll be very little postal connection, only where it's necessary for contacting those constituents that haven't got email. So yeah, so it'll all work pretty much the same as it does usually. And like I say, it's fortunate because obviously we have the staff elections. So yeah, that's great. Is there any other questions about that, Millie? Are you happy? Okay.
Yes, thanks, Sam.
I've got Jackie wanting to come in. Sam, I've got a funny feeling it was you that was making a noise. There was quite a lot of interference and we all went on mute, but it was still interfering. So we'll just monitor it a little bit and see who it was. But I'd like to invite Jackie in because she had a question.
Not a question really, just a comment about Cuppa by the Cooler. I just wanted to formally thank Sam for introducing a Cuppa by the Cooler, and because I think those of us that have joined it have found it a really good opportunity to get to know each other and actually despite the fact that it's quite relaxed, we do actually get a lot of business done, and it's just a really useful networking opportunity. So I just wanted to thank Sam for facilitating that, and I'd encourage all the governors to drop in at some point and have a chat.
Oh yes, thank you, Jackie. Yes, it's been helpful for the governors, I think, because they've been able to, you know, talk informally and chat through any sort of questions that they've got, or, you know, and you know, we've had some fun with it as well on some celebratory days for volunteers. So yeah, thank you to everybody that's taken part, and of course it is only optional, you know, just in case anybody wants to come in and check in with us. So thank you. Has anybody got any more questions about the report before I move on? There's the last bit about the click emails, but that is basically retrospective, so that's all the communications that have gone out so far. So
Daniel's got a question.
Daniel,
hello, Daniel.
He's asking the question.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know how the APM will work for results?
With the current COVID situation.
Pauline, would you like me to respond to that?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yes, I'm saying.
So Daniel, I take it you mean in terms of how we will run the APM this year in light of COVID, and then therefore how will the results be announced?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so we're currently, or I am currently planning the format, or a revised format for the APM this year. We are obviously required to hold an APM, but as I'm sure you'll well imagine, unfortunately, it's not likely that we will be able to run it in the same way that we have done in previous years, which is really disappointing because it's been a great success. And having so many people there in person, and our mixture of activity and regulatory pieces on the day, we won't be able to engage in. But safe to say, we will obviously meet our obligations under our regulatory requirements to hold the annual public meeting. And obviously, therefore, we will announce the results of the governor elections. But at this stage, I can't give you any particular details about how we will do it. We'll keep you up to date.
Thank you, Karen.
Karen, while I've got you, Millie's asking, could we run an online event?
It is highly likely, Pauline, that the regulatory element of it will definitely have to be. So we will look at some sort of live events like we do for the board meetings, and the live streaming it. And there's no reason, I don't want to make promises that we can't keep at the moment, but my initial thoughts are that we might have an element of presentations from services, so we can still incorporate some of that less formal piece in the event. So it is just work in progress at the moment, but yes, I'm highly expecting that it will be an online live streamed event.
Just to give you a brief update, I could be your guinea pig, Karen, because for my sins, as you know, I run the, well, Sam certainly knows, I run the At Your Voice for Health Watch, which is normally a public event. And you come to it as well, don't you, Sam? But we're going to go live. Well, I don't know whether we're going to go live. I think we're going live, but it's public live and it's being live streamed. So it's going to be a bit scary, but we're going to try it and see what happens. And that's in July. So.
Okay, well, we'll look out. And
I know. Please don't all come in. That's all I can say. Yeah, well, we'll see. You know, we're sort of still looking at the technology to how, you know, this is okay, but it's how you do with lots of public there, and we generally get quite a lot to the event. So as we do at the APM, so it's how you do it successfully, or whether you sort of don't do it. So yeah, fingers crossed. Right. Somebody else has got a question, but it's not quite come up on. Millie, have you still got a question, or was that question answered? Was that okay?
That was answered. Thanks, Pauline.
Okay. And then Daniel, I've just got a queue, but for you. So do you want to come in on your question?
Yes, thank you, Pauline. The question's really to Sam. It's about the communications and the level of email bounces, how many emails have been opened and how many have been clicked. It's the first time I've seen this one, so it's very informative. Thank you. But some of the percentages of being opened are quite low to very low, and quite a high bounce rate. Do we just let them bounce and then send the next email out for it to bounce again, or do we remove them from the list? And are there any considerations on how we increase people's engagement with those emails? Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, so we routinely review the email bounces. That's when the email address hasn't been recognised for whatever reason, and that might be just a simple letter that's out of place. So we look into that and try and keep those bounce rates down as much as we can. It does tend to sit at sort of 50 and 60, and we'll probably be due to be going out to checking those bounces, those email addresses soon. With regard to the low rate of emails opened and clicks, the amount that people click is dependent on whether there is a link within the email. But in terms of open, that is just looking at the email. And yes, it is quite difficult to engage with the membership, and it does sit at that rate at the moment. In terms of actually getting the rate up, it does depend on how you communicate as well, in terms of your subject header. We've got a number of different ways we can split groups. So we can split the membership that we're communicating group into half, and we can communicate it with it one way and then another way on the same communication and compare hits, for example. We can do all that on the system, but it does invariably sit at the 20-30%. We do tend to have quite high rates on the communications that go out to staff, but in terms of the other areas, the constituency areas, they are sitting at that at the moment. Dan, does that answer all of your questions, or have you got any others?
Yeah, thank you. That's fine, thank you.
Okay. So I don't know whether there is any other questions that the committee's got about the report.
Okay. Nobody's coming back, Sam. So, and the fuzziness seems to have gone. So whatever it was, it's we're back to normal now. Okay, thank you, Sam. Thanks for that, and we can receive that report and for now and move on. Thank you. Right, we have Linda. Welcome to our representation committee. And would you like to give us an update on involvement, or lack of it, should I say? So you're on mute, are you, Linda?
Yeah, sorry about that, Pauline.
Okay.
Yes, as you might expect, engagement's been quite badly affected, and that's largely due to the fact that we do normally a lot of face-to-face activity, events, consultations, and contacts with people, and I think people's priorities changed as well. It's about keeping people safe, so I think their priorities changed in terms of how they wanted to engage with us. But as we ease out of lockdown, I think people are now starting to think more about how we engage in the new normal ways of engaging. So we have been out to our contact list, our engagement contact list, and we have had a good response back from people saying yes, they would like to start thinking about new ways of engaging. So potentially we might be looking at some online platform work, maybe similar to what's happening with the carers and the daily cuppa catch-ups they're having. We have done little pieces of work as some of the new services especially wanted to continue with the engagement work that was started. But I think we did something as well recently with the older adult service. I'm looking at Jackie, just in terms of getting some comments on a couple of leaflets and actually just re-engaging with people around some advisory groups that have been set up. So I think slowly it's starting to rebuild as we ease out of lockdown and people perhaps can start meeting up more. In terms of managed care network, Pauline, you asked me about that. Again, managed care network and the autism support network, both networks badly affected again, because much of the activity is done through groups and outdoor activity with people. So initially everybody had to close down as we went into lockdown. But again, voluntary sector are very innovative and have thought of new and different ways of doing things. Some of the groups have completely closed. And again, that's because, you know, of the circumstances that they're in terms of meeting up with people. Some of the groups are offering alternative activity. So, for example, one of the groups have extended their phone contact because they work with families and they didn't want to lose that, especially when people are in isolation. So they've extended their contacts with their beneficiaries. Some of the groups are sending out resource packs for people to do, and they've proved very popular. And one of our groups in Gainsborough, who you may have come across, the Stepping Stone Theatre Group, have initially, they were going to just shut down completely, but then came up with the idea of having a daily talk over Facebook, and that's proving really popular. So much so they've been in the local paper, and they've actually won a recent charity award as well. So a mixture really of activity. Wave 10 funding was due to be released in April, but again that's now been put on hold. And that was done in agreement with the Commissioner at Lincolnshire County Council. Not sure when that's going to be released, but I think moving forward, you know, we will look at priorities as we move out of the restrictions, and again, you know, it's reported quite a lot in the news that people's mental health has been quite, you know, severely infected in some cases. So I think we'll certainly look at the activity, you know, moving forward, and how that will support people living in their, you know, in their communities. So that's it really. So any questions that you have for me?
Yeah, I have a few lining up. So I've got Jackie that's saying thank you to the older adults. We very much appreciated the support from Linda and her team. So thank you, Linda. Millie's also saying thank you, brilliant news about stepping stones. And I think, yeah, we'll all say that. That's excellent. Millie also has a question for you, and followed by Daniel. Thank you, Linda.
Did Daniel have the question first? I don't want to.
It's you first, Millie.
Okay. It's kind of maybe been answered already by the stepping stones thing, but I was kind of wondering whether they were sort of whether any groups were kind of utilising things like we're doing, like Teams or Zoom, to kind of continue having interaction. And I'm wondering if that was something we were doing to kind of interact with members or with you know, people who want to be involved with decisions in the trust. I was wondering if that was something we were utilising.
Yeah, I mean, from a managed care network engagement point of view, I think some of the groups are using online platforms. So, for example, we've got a group or a project called Dark Side Training, and they operate normally from a gym, supporting women and young women. So they've been doing a lot of coaching online instead of going along to a gym. So I think where the groups are able to, they have been using online facilities. That's not always possible. So, for example, if we've got one or two groups maybe have allotments, so so there's some activity that it doesn't really sit well with. But I think where it has been possible, I think by and large the groups have been using that. And of course, there's lots of different online platforms that people can use. I know people have been using Zoom, and I think WebEx is something that the carers, the daily carers group are using, and that's proved really popular. So I think where people can connect online, they are doing so.
Thank you, Linda. That's really helpful. I was just mentioning it because I think we've all found the whole cuppa by the cooler was such a good idea to to keep people in touch whilst we kind of can't see each other physically. So thank you for answering my question.
Thanks, Millie. Daniel, are you there?
Yep, thank you, Pauline. It was more of a comment, really. I just wanted to officially put on record my thanks to Linda for letting me tag along to the Community Rehab Service event. It was a good eye-opener onto what her and her team do and the hard work they put in, and I would recommend to any governor that has the time to go along to one of these events, to speak to Linda and go along and see how it runs. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Linda, just on the managed care network that they already have funding, if they haven't been able to spend it, will that sort of be extended, or because obviously with lockdown, etc., what will happen effectively?
I think initially, Pauline, what we've said, especially when we went into lockdown, and obviously nobody has any idea how long this is going to go on for. But initially, what we said to groups is, we will support you to be as flexible as possible, and where some of the groups are not able to put on activity, we will look to extend those contracts out the other end. Obviously there will be some cut-off point, but at the moment the Wave 9 contracts we're extending out to December, and then we'll review it when we get to that point. But we wanted to try and be as flexible and supportive to the projects as possible. Okay,
so something I didn't say when we first went through the minutes, but I'm assuming, and sorry to assume, but are you dealing with the autism as well as the managed care network? So
I am, yes.
Yeah, can you update us on that, because that was in our minutes as well, from the last time, was about the fact that there was that was starting in February, so that would have been just before the lockdown as well. So what's happening there?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think with the Autism Support Network, that was harder for them because they hadn't even really got started when we went into lockdown in March. So I think most of the groups are on hold. Again, one or two of the groups have been able to offer some sort of alternative activity. But most of the autism groups, unfortunately, are on hold at this stage. I mean, one of the examples I can give you is that Lincoln City Foundation, which is part of Lincoln Football Club, were putting on a fantastic project, which was about match day events and supporting people on the autistic spectrum and their families to attend those events, and in turn they wanted to make that more autism aware. But as you can appreciate, there's no football on at the moment, so that had to stop. So there's quite a few similar sort of situations. So, and again, you know, the same as Wave 9, we will do our best to, you know, enable those groups to continue with some flexibility around that, as and when they can start to reopen and start supporting people. I mean, again, another one of the autism groups was about having cinema screenings in the Grantham area. So again, you know, they weren't able to continue with that, unfortunately. So yeah, it's been a difficult time for many of the groups and the activities.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, I am. I'm looking to see if I'm on mute. No, thank you. Right, so have we had the update from the involvement strategy from March?
There's no update at the moment, Pauline, other than the involving people strategy is currently sitting with Jane Marshall.
Okay. Right, so if anybody has got any further questions for Linda, comments? I'm taking that as a no, and I'm going to thank you, Linda, very much, and keep plodding on, because we will come out of it the other end somewhere. But I think you're doing a great job, and I know I certainly know things like the cuppa for carers. I was going to say cuppa by the cooler, but cuppa for carers, I know that's going down really well. Yes, so yeah. You know, there are lots of innovation that happens in times like this, isn't there? So
absolutely,
yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on, Jane, this was your idea. Jane Avison. At our last conversation, at our last meeting, you suggested that we invited Sarah Bruin along to talk about the individual placement support.
That's right, yeah.
So we have done it, and we have Sarah sitting there very patiently.
Morning.
Good morning, Sarah. And we do have a presentation, I believe.
We do. I'm just trying to go on the share screen, and it's not how we practiced it last week.
Oh dear.
Hold on.
So what I'd like to say, while Sarah's putting her screen up, what I'd like to suggest is that we don't have questions while Sarah's going through the presentation. If you want to put your questions in the chat bar, as per, if we do not get around to answering them all through and after the session, Sarah will come back to you and answer them after. That is correct, is it not, Sarah?
It is correct, yes.
Okay, so I will invite questions after, but as I say, if we don't get through them, then Sarah will come back to you, because we do have another speaker after Sarah. So, and we would like to finish on time, and we would like to have a conversation with us all. So thank you, Sarah. There she is.
Hello.
Oh, I'm seeing me. There we go. That's
Can you see the presentation yet?
We can see a presentation. Well, I can. Oh, everybody else? I can't see everybody else. So I'm getting some yeses.
Okay.
Yes, I've got yeses. So fire away. I'm going to go on mute now.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. My name's Sarah Bruin, and I'm the team manager for the individual placement and support employment team. Just a presentation around what the service provides and how we support our service users. So, okay, so you'll see the map of the area that we cover. So we cover the whole of Lincolnshire, and within each of the community mental health teams, there's an employment specialist that's embedded within that community mental health team. You'll see for Spalding, we have just recruited, so we're just waiting for paperwork to come through. And for Lincoln South, we have also just recruited. So we're covering the whole of Lincolnshire, and we sit within all of the adult community mental health teams. So just a bit of background information. We received funding in April 2018 for 2 years, and this was to increase the employment team from 2.5 members of staff to 7. So we recruited 4 new employment specialists and myself as the team manager. So over those 2 years, we had to hit certain targets. And then because of kind of being so successful, we were then able to expand again. So we then received recurrent funding from the CCGs, which enabled us to recruit 2 more team members. What we identified was Stamford and Spalding were high referral areas. So we needed to have an employment specialist individual for each CMHT. So that was the post we asked for funding for, as well as a Band 6 deputy to support me with managing the team, so that we can able to promote it and engage with other businesses. So we have Wave 3 funding from NHS England for 1 year for the 2 new team members, and then it will become recurrent funding. So the evidence around IPS is between 70% to 90% of people with mental health issues do really want to work, but it's identified that only around 37% are actually in paid employment. And for people with a severe mental illness, it's just 7%. So this is taken from IPS Grow, which we follow and are a centre of excellence with. So I think there has been a most recent survey that these numbers have increased, which is great since the team's expanded. But basically in the 2016 LPFT Community Mental Health Survey, it was identified that only 3.8 out of 10 people responded that they'd received help or advice with finding or retaining employment. And I think feedback that I've had around that has increased because our team's increased, so we've been able to give that support. So I'm sure most people are quite aware of the positive effects of actually going to work. So not only does it provide income and identity, kind of the social aspect of it, it gives good routine and structure, and it gives opportunities to gain achievements and contribute. So within IPS, we have 8 principles. So the main point around IPS is that the aim is to find competitive employment. It's open to all who want to work. We look at job searches with what the person wants to search for. It's quickly, so it's quite a rapid service. The employment specialists are part of that clinical team, and they engage with local employers to build up relationships. So we get those opportunities for service users. It's very much individualised for both parties, so the employer and the service user. And we do provide some benefits counselling to ensure that the person isn't going to be worse off from working. So these are all the other aspects of support that we do provide. So it covers everything. So it's personalised and individual. It's around CVs, job applications, interviews, and that can be from helping the person complete that application form to sitting on an interview with that person just to provide support. We have local employers that we do engage with, but we're always looking to build up other employer relationships, because the more relationships we have with people, the more job opportunities we find out about. So once the person finds the paid employment that they actually want, we then provide follow-on support. So that support can be, if the person wishes, we will engage with the employer and support, look at reasonable adjustments, and just kind of help that process of getting back into work, so it doesn't just end once we get somebody a job. And then it is around that follow-on support to make sure that everything is going okay. And then so the benefits of IPS clients are twice as likely to gain employment and work for significantly longer. The evidence around this is if we do a job that we enjoy and that we want to do, we're going to have a better work-life balance, and we're going to be a lot happier. And then there's other evidence from the Centre for Mental Health around individuals who gain employment have reduced hospitalisation. So these are our figures, so for year 2. So as you can see over the quarters, the referrals have increased, and this will be around the promotion of the service, clinical teams being aware of what our service delivers and the support that we give. So they're the numbers. And then the job outcomes. So they've risen and they've kind of dipped a little, and that really depends on sometimes time of the year. Sometimes people may change their mind about what jobs they want to go for. We have to wait. So an actual job outcome is counted as soon as somebody starts that job. So currently with COVID-19, we've got a lot of people that have been offered jobs, but we can't class it as a job outcome until their start date, and quite a lot of job start dates have been paused. So these are examples of jobs that we get people. So it's around competitive jobs. We don't have a really good relationship with one employer. We ensure that we liaise and engage with a variety of employers. So we will approach people that the service users have identified they want to work for, and we'll also just do a variety of employer engagement. So each employment specialist has to do employer engagement each week, where they'll do an industry walk. They will go into shops, businesses, explain a little bit about our role, but also hear about their recruitment process to kind of engage them. So as you'll see, there's a variety of jobs that we've got people into. There are a lot more, but we wanted to show kind of the variety of different things that we've helped people into. And then, so that's kind of the base at the minute. So all of the employment specialists sit around Lincolnshire. We accept referrals from the adult community mental health teams, early intervention in psychosis, and the consultant psychiatrists that sit under the adult community mental health teams. Now, the only reason why it's set for these referrals is because we are an IPS service and we do have Centre of Excellence. And because IPS is very rapid, it's fast moving, and we are only funded for those areas of referrals, which I know isn't ideal because we have a lot of services within LPFT. So what myself and the team do is make sure that if somebody comes to us for help, but we can't accept a referral, we have information and signposting sheets that we can share. So although we can't accept the referral, we will give that information because we do hold a lot of information around kind of employers, but also training. So we don't look at voluntary work. It's purely around that paid work, unless somebody wants to volunteer alongside to build up the reference. And the same with training. If people want to kind of further their education, we can support them with that, but the main goal has to be paid employment. And then we give that wraparound care from filling in the forms to supporting with interview clothes and supporting to the first day at work if necessary. And I think that's kind of it. So if anybody does have any questions, then please.
Right, I'm going to come in a moment, Sarah. And all right, you're going away now. Your presentation is, stay there. Right, if you bear with me in a minute, I'm going to read some. I've got Jackie that's saying this is such a positive service. Well done, Sarah and the team. I've also got Thomas Dunning saying this is great. Millie saying this is a fantastic service. There's really important service. Great to see how this has grown. That's from Paul Devlin. So I think you've got the thumbs up from actually the service. So really, really good, and really. So first, thank you, Jane, for bringing it to our attention, and thank you, Sarah, for actually demonstrating. And you see, technology does work.
It does.
We did have a trial run, didn't we, Sam? But yeah,
we did. It's echoed in my ear throughout constantly, but I've just ignored it.
Did do a little bit of echoing, but not too bad. So I've now got some questions. So I'm going to take them in order that they came through. And Jane was the first one that came through.
Oh, hello, Sarah, and thank you very much for that. It really is a positive service, and I thought that when I met you last year, I think it was now. But I just want to ask you one question, and that is of how the employer is supported by you, and what's the encouragement for an employer to take on somebody?
Okay, so what we do is with the employers, I make sure I do employer engagement as well, because I know it's not easy trying to engage people, so it's good to kind of give it a go so I can support the team. So when we go out to employers, we will ask them kind of about their business and their recruitment process, and they will explain a little bit about us, and kind of go in with, you know, quite a lot of people do experience mental health, and we offer that support. The people that we encourage to apply for your positions, they actually want to work for you. They know about your business. We can offer employer packs and support. So we will, if the person gives consent, we will meet with the employer, emails, telephones. We've done employer packs, which is something we've managed to complete during COVID-19 because of kind of having capacity. So there's an employer pack of signposting information, and then if employers want to and the person gives consent, we'll make a tailored pack. So depending on the person's mental health experience, we will provide information around that mental health condition.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one, Don. Don, you have a question wherever you are.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hello.
Just to point out, this is just one of the many hats that she wears. She has multi roles within the trust, one of which is being kind of my boss within the volunteer role. So yes, fantastic service, and work an absolute Trojan of a workhorse. But I have a question with regards to this, and that is, do we tap into the modern apprenticeship scheme? So not only do we get them employment, do we get them to go into education as well, so that we can kind of tap into what the government offers with regards that massive incentive to the employer that the apprentice wage is kind of paid for by the government as well. So it's an even bigger incentive for them to employ somebody, but the person applying for the job also has that ability to go to college once a week, twice a week, or whatever that involves. Do we tap into that at all?
Yeah, so we support people with apprenticeships, and we have them within the trust as well. So service users have come into our trust. We also look at Prince's Trust. Although the main focus is paid employment, we will look at apprenticeships. We just don't accept referrals if somebody wants to do college courses, unless they want to find paid work but want to do college along the way. So for instance, if we get somebody into a job that they want to do, but they have further aspirations, we will then support them with the follow-on work for what they're doing, and then support them to then meet their next goal. So we can see people for as long as they're under CMHT, EI or consultant. So a lot of signposting, and although we don't do the volunteer side of things, we will signpost to build people's CVs. But the general rule is they have to say they want paid work. But yeah, apprenticeships and such like, definitely.
Yeah. From my point of view, I'm just being, a needy, greedy governor. That the link between recovery college and employment is that link kind of there, that we can get both services providing everything that we need for someone, because we all know that going into employment isn't just necessarily about whether or not you can do the job. Some employers like you to have some academics or some kind of that kind of experience behind you to back it up. So is there that link, is there that overlap within the service?
Yeah, so we do, because I was quite involved with the recovery college before I came into this post. So I wanted to make sure that link was there and that my team know about the recovery college and promote it. just before COVID-19, we'd planned and we'd got a full recovery course ready to be delivered. However, that had to obviously not go ahead. But what we've started to do now, we're on our second clip of one of my employment specialists and the Recovery College putting together short videos of helping people with that kind of information and encouraging Recovery College. So that link's there. And then what we do is obviously with each individual, everyone's different. They'll all have different goals. Some might know what they want to do, some won't. So we really kind of pull it apart and make sure it's what they want to do. So if they do need qualifications, then we would either signpost them to do that or help them into a job that they want to do, but then signpost and give them, because we get a lot of information on free courses and other such available things. So there's definitely that link.
Sarah, thank you.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the sterling work. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you.
Sarah. Hugh, are you still there somewhere?
Yes, thanks, Pauline. Thank you. Sarah, thanks for the presentation. Really good work. Just a question about the extent to which you promote the service within the third sector to actually be able to signpost your service.
Okay, so what's a way of increasing that? So currently, up to just before COVID, there was only myself managing the team across Lincolnshire, but we would make sure that we go to internal and external events. So we have really close relationships with DWP and the Job Centre. So I meet with the Job Centre business partner every 2 to 3 months, but we email a lot. And with each disability employment advisor, each employment specialist has to meet them face to face. So therefore we present at kind of council meetings, we go around the colleges. So we really try and engage, and we'll do a presentation wherever we can. So we get involved as much as we can with third sector to promote it. We'll link in with Steps to Change as well. So any kind of opportunity we'll present.
Does that answer your question, Hugh?
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Andy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's very impressive and clearly really important work. So I applaud you for what you're doing. It's great. I think you mentioned that sometimes you're unable to accept referrals. I didn't know if that was based on geography or where the person lived. And if so, are you sort of gathering any information for yourself about where your service gaps might be, and should you be able in the future to expand the offer to the population as opposed to just localities? You'd have a clear sense of where you'd like to go next.
Yeah, so with the first set of funding that we had, there was only Stamford and Spalding that had a shared employment specialist, and Lincoln and Gainsborough, so Lincoln North and Gainsborough. So what we did is we was able to record and log that Stamford really needed an own employment specialist, and that by having a senior employment specialist, I would be able to get out there and do more employer engagement and more kind of business promotion so that we can get more referrals. So there's no area that we, like no locality, we don't accept referrals. So Skegness has an employment specialist, Louth does, and so forth. But what we do need is looking at it, and the more it promotes, there are a couple of areas, one specifically where we originally put the bid in, there wasn't a waiting list, whereas now there's a little bit of a waiting list. So when we put the second lot of funding in, as well as having a senior employment specialist, that employment specialist would also sit with Grantham, because Grantham and Sleaford Community Mental Health Team are high referrals as well. So we are monitoring it, and this service, I can't see it going away. It can only grow because there's such a need. And I think once COVID lifts a little bit more, I think more referrals will come in, more people will be aware of the service. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's very helpful, thank you. So I sit on the mental health recovery cell looking at the sort of developing the universal offer for the population for mental health support in its broadest sense. So it's really helpful to have your service in mind, because we are looking at what we think will come down the track.
Yeah, and I think although we only accept referrals within the trust for the adult CMHT, EI and consultants, I do go out, and I'll be able to now, we've expanded, to go to some of the more inpatient areas to promote the service and say that although we can't accept the referral now while you're inpatient, if you get the staff that work there to identify that in you, the referral to CMHT or EI, then we know about it, so we can pick you up straight away. So as soon as the service picks them up, we can engage. So, but yeah.
Thanks,
Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. I have a question for you, Sarah, which, so whilst you are attending to our service users, do you have any facility to support their carers?
So what we try and do is, if service users give us consent, we will engage with them, and we do. So we've had feedback, so where maybe mum has emailed and sort of said thank you, and kind of been specific around that support. So yes, as long as the person gives consent, and we do encourage people to do so. Obviously in certain situations it's not appropriate, but no, definitely involve people and encourage the person to get that support, because it's a big step.
And what about trying to get the carer into work as well? Is that anything you would engage with?
So we wouldn't be able to engage because of how the IPS service is, but we do the same like we would with kind of inpatients. I'll go in and talk to people, or we'd share signposts. We try and be as helpful as we can. Yeah,
I'm sure you do, and that's where I was sort of wondering how you would link with other services, etc. So
yeah, I mean, the good link obviously has a volunteer service to the side of this. So with the weekly newsletter we've been doing for that, when I find out specific information around work and carers, we feed it into that volunteer newsletter as well. So, and they do cross over quite a bit.
Okay, thank you. Millie's put a comment in the sidebar as well to say, I think it's very good that the service recognises that if a person enjoys their work, they're more likely to stay in work long term, and it's important for people with ill mental health. So I think we are going to close at that, because we have got another speaker coming on, and I know we're heading rapidly towards 12 o'clock and we still have quite a bit on the agenda. So thank you so much, Sarah. It's been absolutely beneficial. I'm sure everybody that is saying in the sidebar, it's been great. I can see lots of happy faces, ones that I can see. So thank you so much. It's been really interesting. Lots of brilliant thank yous coming through as well. So thanks very much, Sarah.
Thank you. And if anyone has any employer contacts, send them through for me.
Will do. That's a good call. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. I know Sarah's got to go, but I would now like to invite something new to our governors, I think, to some of our governors. Not new to the trust, though. We've had a research department for quite some considerable time, but Tracy seems to sort of languish in the background. Have you got your mic on now, Tracy?
Yes,
I would like to invite Tracy to come in and give us, it's quite a brief overview of what goes on in our trust, and give us a bit of an explanation, because I think often research can be sort of either mice running around on a wheel, or things like that. But I think since COVID, it possibly has done research a little bit of good, knowing that we now have to work on the scientific side of things before the government put anything in, allegedly. So I'm going to pass over to you now, Tracy, and give us some updates on research and how we as governors can be involved, how we can get involved, and how you would like us to be involved. So over to you. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you very much for inviting me this morning. My name's Tracy McCraner. I'm the Clinical Research Manager for the Trust. I've worked for the Trust for 23 years now and with research for 12 years. I originally came on a 6-month fixed-term contract. I was the first research nurse post within the Trust, and I've never been anywhere else. I feel it is a real privilege to work in research and do the work that I do. We sit within the Medical Directorate, within the structure of the Trust, and have great support from the Medical Director and Deputy Medical Director. I lead a team of 10. That has steadily grown. So 12 years ago, we had 1 post, which was my first one, and we've slowly increased that funding due to our research activity over the years. So we now have a team of 10. They are National Institute for Health Research, or NIHR, funded posts. And the NIHR is just the Department of Health's research arm. So it's all public money. It just comes different. Research is not funded out of trust budgets. The bulk of it comes down through the NIHR route, and that money is given to trusts because the Department of Health wants the NHS to be research active. Everything we deliver as an NHS organisation is evidenced by the types of trials that we run across the county. Nothing gets in NICE guidance, nothing gets in national policies and processes without going through these types of trials. So that's why I say the Department of Health want every NHS trust to be research active. We cover as a team 3 broad areas of work. The first one is research governance. So every research study that runs within the NHS that recruits its sample from the NHS, whether that's staff, patients or carers, has to have a certain level of research governance checks to make sure that that study is safe and appropriate. It's protecting the public and patients really. And that research governance process is overseen by a body called the Health Research Authority, or HRA, who review all of the studies that run. And that includes an NHS ethics review where appropriate. There are different levels of review depending on the complexity of the study. Research governance is a trust-funded responsibility, and it is mandatory. If trusts want to run research projects, they have to have that research governance infrastructure. So I'm the research governance lead for the trust. The trust funds my post 2 days a week to cover this work, and I also have a trust-funded 2 days a week admin support for that. And we manage all the research through its life cycle. So we do an initial round of checks when a study opens, and then we manage contracts, letters of access, amendments to essential documents and processes, right the way through to the study closing down, so that the whole process is properly managed. So that's a big part of our work. Studies vary hugely. Broadly 2 categories: observational, which are more straightforward studies, and lots of surveys, for instance, focus groups fall into that category. And then a number of interventional studies, which are delivering trial interventions of some sort. So that's the first broad area of work. The second is research delivery. So this is National Institute for Health Research funded trials There's a portfolio of NIHR studies, and we assess and we bring as many of those studies to the trust and the county as we can. It's a competitive process. Every study will need only a certain number of sites. They have funding for a certain number of sites. So we express interest in anything that is appropriate. To bring a trial to the trust, it has to be feasible for our services. So for instance, we couldn't express an interest in a cancer trial because we don't provide cancer care and treatment. So the bulk of our trials are mental health. We do push potentially any area of trust business we can take a trial in, but it does depend. Each trial is quite specific in its inclusion and exclusion criteria. So before we take a trial, every study will be assessed against that criteria and what we deliver as a trust to see if we can take it. We then have to go out and we get a clinical lead for that study, which is called a PI, a principal investigator, and they're the person that works with us to lead that trial throughout its life cycle in the trust. At any one time, we've got about 50 of these studies running across the trust and the locality. So they're in various stages of setup, open to recruitment and follow-up. And we are a first-class research delivery organisation. I am biased because it's my team and I feel very strongly about it, but I don't know anywhere that does this as well as we do. We drive these studies with a real passion because we realise the value to our services and our patients that they're bringing. So a couple of examples of those types of trials that we're doing at the moment. One is a study called CLIMB, and that is a survey that quite literally anybody over the age of 18 can take part in. It's online, and it's asking patient and public views on the sharing of health data. That's for research purposes and other data and other reasons as well. But the routine data that we collect as an NHS body, the sharing of that anonymously for other purposes, what do patients and public feel about that? So that's an example of quite a straightforward observational study we've got running at the moment. An example of an interventional trial is something called Pathfinder. This is running in our older adult services, and it's problem adaptation therapy for depression and dementia. So we are delivering the trial intervention. It's being developed. It was originally developed a path intervention in America. It's being trialled here, run out of University College London, and the trust is a site for this study. And we're delivering the trial intervention to a group of eligible patients who agree to take part and give their informed consent. So that's an example of a more complex interventional trial we're delivering now. We've been impacted with this delivery work massively by COVID, as you might expect, because a lot of the work that we do on the trials is face-to-face. So towards the end of March, beginning of April, the majority of those 50 trials, recruitment to them was paused because we couldn't carry on doing the face-to-face work. Pathfinder was an example of a study that rapidly changed its processes, and we're actually delivering the intervention remotely now rather than face-to-face. So they very, very rapidly put the amendments through and got that process in place, which has allowed us to carry on. Our priority at the moment is the urgent public health group of studies. So research is phase 3 of the government's response to COVID. And the urgent public health register trials are largely recruiting in acute hospital settings at the moment because they are treatment and vaccine trials. But we have been supporting those trials county-wide. So the team that I line manage, our research nurses and research practitioners, are working alongside our colleagues at ULHT to deliver those trials within their services. And that's a directive from Public Health England, because this will be the treatments and the vaccines coming through at a rapid rate to support the response to the pandemic. The next wave will be vaccine trials. There are between 8 and 12 being looked at nationally at the moment, and we very much hope that some of those will be coming to the East Midlands. And we are looking as a county-wide system now how we can support those trials. But I hope very much that some of them will come to our region. The third broad area of our work is research development. So all of those studies that I was talking about, the 50 that we deliver, are hosted by us as a trust. So they're written and developed and funded elsewhere. They come from all over the country. But research development, the third area of our work, is research that is written, developed and funded here. Now, whilst we're a first-class host organisation for the delivery of studies, we're really yet to get off the blocks with the development side, but this is something that we're really trying to ramp up now with support. It is a difficult process. The funding applications and the grant applications is really competitive. You need, for anything like this, to develop our own research, you need teams of people. So we need strong academic input, we need strong clinical input, and we need strong patient and public involvement input. So it's very much a team effort. It also takes a long time. If there's a funding call that came out now, an NIHR one, and we applied for it, there are 3 stages which could take potentially up to a year before you're passed at the final stage and you're given the funding. And then you've got to set up that trial and run it. So development and sponsorship of our own research is a long-term aim, but it does fit with university hospital status. And I don't know whether as a group anybody has sort of spoken to you about that, but it's something that our exec team and particularly our chief exec would like to pursue. And university hospital status is largely based around education and research. And the research that it refers to is the development and sponsorship. So we're really going to have to up our game with regard to research development if we want longer term to apply for university hospital status. But there are lots of exciting things pulling through that stream of work now. We have a research development forum we've developed with the University of Lincoln, who are our partners in that forum, and that's a group which brings opportunities for networking and collaborating on ideas from across the trust and the university. And we are seeing some projects and some grant applications getting off the ground through that route now. We also run a forum called Enrich, which is enabling research in care homes, and we are having some really good success through that as well. So there's 40 or more care homes that are signed up to Enrich across the county, and the Enrich forum again is open to anybody from the trust or the university to bring together those groups of people to get through some funding applications. And we have had some initial success. We have received some Alzheimer's Society and Dunhill funding through the Enrich Forum. There's lots and lots of ongoing work, some of it that has been slightly paused by COVID, but we have a new research strategy that has gone to the Quality Committee, and it's been taken to the Board Away Day at the end of June to see how the research strategy can align better with Trust overarching strategy, which is a great piece of work. Peter Howe is supporting us with that, which will line research up very, very strongly with all of the Trust processes, because for a long time we've sort of sat outside of those. I think because largely we are externally funded, has meant sometimes that we have slightly sat outside of those processes, but it's all really, really positive at the moment. I don't think in 12 years there's ever been more support of research and what we're doing. So just a huge thank you to everybody for that, really. How the governors can get involved. the delivery of studies. So I would like a route where, as studies open in the trust, they could come to the governors so that they know, as studies coming on board, which studies are opening. Consider taking part in studies yourself. There are a lot open to patients and public, quite wide inclusion criteria. So that's a good way of finding out more about research and being more involved. And consider how you might be able to support us in promoting those studies across the trust and services. Also with the development of studies. So again, we've had a bit of success last week with this through a question that came through the governors, and it was Don that I think raised the question, and I've had the conversation with Don and Sam. And we put the call out and the information out via the Research Development Forum. And there's now a project with the College of Arts at the University of Lincoln, which hopefully will be getting off the ground. I've introduced Don to be part of that conversation about how that goes forward, but it's to do with CAMS services, children and adolescents, and social isolation and mental health. So that's a really good example of, again, ideas that have come from the governors that are getting off the ground now. But there are lots of studies the other way around where I think initial ideas come from the university or clinicians that I could feed back to the governors within these meetings or within other mechanisms that you have, to see if there are any individuals that would like to possibly get involved in the development of those ideas.
Tracy, I'm just wondering, because I'm looking at the time and we've still got some business to do.
Yes.
Two things we could possibly do is, one, I'm wondering if we could hear a bit more, and I'm looking at Sam. She can't see that I'm looking at her, but
I can see.
I'm wondering if we could invite you to come to Cuppa by the Cooler, because I think we've got lots of questions that we might want to ask. And I can see Don and I can see lots of people. And I know that if we start asking questions now, I'm going to go way, way over time, and I've still got lots of things on the agenda. I think you've given us an overview, and I think you've given us an appetite. So at this point, I'm not going to open it for questions, because I know we haven't got the time. What I'm going to do, Tracy, if you are willing, is if we can have a further conversation to put something together to then deliver again and take through with Sam, if maybe Sam, yourself and I can put something together to put an offer out to our governors to then say, look, you know, because there's so many things there. Immediately I can hear that, you know, we've got PPI straight away, you know, can we set up a PPI group? And I mean, you know that I'm heavily involved with research already. So immediately I've got Jackie coming in saying she already knows that research being introduced through the team, you know, is just so good to enhance the staff skills and patient and carers to feel valued. You know, I know the enhancement of research. So I'm getting a steer here that, you know, we want to hear more.
I can't hear you.
It's given us an appetite to hear more from you, and I think, you know, you've opened the door, so let's get more information, and let's get some more, and we can invite you back to this. You know, we need, but we need more. So thank you, Tracy, at this point, but we're gonna have to move on, otherwise I'm not going to get through this.
I think that's fine. I think that's the best way of approaching it. Yep. Research there's just so much.
There is.
It's difficult to know where to start. Yep. But I think shorter, sharper conversations about specific things, would be great. Yes, thank you.
So if we work together, Sam and yourself, and then we'll come back to, you know, all the governors. We'll come back, even the ones that don't come into the cuppa by the cooler. We'll get something out to all governors, and then you will invite you back in and let everybody know when you're going to be there. But thank you so much. That's been really helpful.
Thank you.
So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to move on to Sam with the iLog, please.
Thanks, Pauline. I will be very quick with this in terms of the time, but basically we've got the majority of the iLogs that have been raised. And for those of you that don't know what the iLogs are, they're issues, ideas, innovations, anything beginning with an I that we've recorded since January to May this year, and our outcomes on them. So we haven't got many that are still outstanding, and the majority of them are green and have been processed. So thank you, Pauline. Pauline, we can't hear you again.
Oh, I know. I keep switching myself off. Isn't it lovely for you all? Thank you. Right, now then, we have got Joanne, who's, no, I don't think, is it Joanne? Is anybody there from?
Hello, it's Sophie from Comms.
I thought it was. I knew it wasn't Joe that I'd seen. Hi, Sophie.
Hello. Have we missed the draft agenda for next?
Oh, we have.
Time.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Karen, I do apologise. I had the draft agenda in my hand. I had the draft agenda in my hand and then I moved it on quite quickly.
I'll be really quick, Pauline. Everybody's received hopefully a copy of the draft agenda, which is here for your review. Just a couple of comments and amends on the backside of the agenda under 4.1 and 4.2 reports from councils, committees. Those just need reversing, those two meetings, because at the time of drafting this agenda we hadn't confirmed a date for the Nominations and Remunerations Committee meeting, which was held on the 11th of June. So that date will be entered and those will be reversed in order. And then importantly, just to point out under 5.5, non-executive director remuneration, that actually will be deferred from the July meeting. The reason being, at the Nominations and Remunerations Committee meeting held recently, there was some discussion about NED remuneration, and there was a request for some further work to be carried out on that. And we're now going to be scheduling a further NOMS meeting in September, where we'll discuss the outcome of that additional piece of work. So that report on the remuneration will come to the Council of Governors at the October meeting. Other than that, Pauline, it's as it is.
Thank you, Karen. Daniel, do you have a comment that you'd like to bring on this one?
Thank you, Pauline. Yes, it's item 6. I've got an item I'd like to add, if the Repcom agrees. This comes up from the discussions by the cooler, with thanks to Pauline and for Don for helping me with this one. There was recently published, as part of Carers Week, the effects that COVID-19 has been having on carers, and especially our own LPFT carers. And it raises a lot of questions, which I think would be pertinent to be asking the trust. So if people are in agreement, I could send the document to Sam for people to have a look at, and if agreement is given, that we add that to the agenda item. Thank you.
Would it come here first, or would it come straight to us at the Council of Governors? I'm going to ask Paul, please.
I think what I would suggest is that if you send through the document, that Karen can take a look and then advise the best place for the conversation, the discussion. So whether it's in this as a public forum, or whether is in the formal Council of Governors. We've got various sort of processes behind the scenes that work out which is the best place to put it, but by all means send it through, Daniel, and then Karen, I think if that comes to you to work out the best way to take that forward so we can get the most meaningful discussion out of it.
Yeah, that's fine, Paul. If Daniel's happy to do that, if you send it through to me, Daniel.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Do you want to CC us in, Daniel, as you mentioned, both Don and myself?
Yeah, sure.
So that we give you that support, because I know obviously you were okay with it once you got the support.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we can tentatively say yes to that, Karen. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So sorry, Sophie, I am back to you. To you now.
That's all right. It's a really quick update, just to say we're on track. We've kind of drafted everything. We're just working on getting it up on the website, and then it's going to be emailed by the end of the month.
Okay, fabulous.
And that's it.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Okay, Karen, I'm going to go back to you.
Thank you. So I'll be brief, but as informative as hopefully I can be. This is about, as it says, governor training and development needs. And I think I picked up especially in the iLog, in the MOSE or the open iLog, there was a point about some support and development in terms of writing narrative pieces specifically. This is something that we have done routinely, tend to do it on an annual basis, but it's not a prerequisite that we carry out an evaluation. But I would suggest that we do carry out via the Evaluate online appraisal system a training needs analysis. Now that newer governors have been in post for a little while, and I appreciate that there have been one or two newcomers, but generally speaking, get a broader view of what people's individual training needs are. We can then carry out that analysis and decide what is coming up, what themes are coming out of that and topics specifically, and would suggest that where there are things that clearly we could deal with, that we focus on those at the Governor's Development Day in the spring of next year. Unfortunately, at the Development Day this year, it is going to be a little bit tight, because everyone will appreciate that with the governor elections coming up, we will have a number potentially of new governors, and so part of that day will actually be given over to actually the training needs of new governors and their introduction to the role and the trust. So would suggest that for spring. Other than that, I don't think there's really much more to say, but I think that's the best course of action if everybody's in agreement with that.
I've had one that says yes, agree with KS. So
thank you,
KS will be you, Karen. I've got another agree. Yeah, I think in the main, yes, I think we're in agreement with that, Karen. So
okay, lovely, thanks. Well, we'll look to get that out. It won't be immediately, and I think bearing in mind we've got a little bit of time between now and obviously the spring Governor Development Day, but we won't waste any time. And if anybody has any immediate real needs and thinks that they do need some support in terms of understanding specific issues or areas relating to their role, then please do shout up and contact Sam or myself or Peter, and we can address those individually. So this is not to say we won't support people in the meantime, but I think it's better that we give it some time and understand and get a broader feel for it.
Thank you. Right, Jane's had to go, I'm afraid, and I'm going to swap the last two items round. because Millie wants to come in. Are you still there, Millie? Yes, you are. Millie wants to come in. We both attended NHS providers virtual governor meeting, but we also have wanted to have a focused meeting. Focused discussion ideas. Unfortunately, yes, we've gone on with speakers, etc. So I'll combine the two. Millie, do you want to come in and just say what you felt about the focused discussion meeting from NHS providers?
Hi, yes, sorry to rush. It's just because I've just got to go in a minute, so I thought I'll do it now. I felt it was really good. They discussed a lot about how COVID-19 has affected things for trusts nationwide, and sort of the ways in which that has impacted on governors specifically. So there was a really good, I don't know whether it was the same for Pauline, but for me there was a good presentation. What I thought I would do, I'll write it up on the Governor Forum, so there's like a written version so people can read it as well when they've got more time. But roughly they sort of discuss some of the issues they've had with kind of there being more of a demand for kind of obviously in terms of COVID-19, but you know, obviously other regular services being impacted. So there are a variety of different things they discussed, you know, in terms of the demand rocketing for PPE, the shortages there, and issues with, even though a lot of old staff have been returned to work, there were a lot of difficulties in matching up those jobs. There are lots of different things we kind of discussed. But I actually kind of so we're discussing how you know, different things that governors have done whilst we've been under lockdown, how trusts have been engaging. And I was sort of saying I mentioned about the cuppa by the cooler, and you know, what a wonderful thing it's been to be able to kind of have an informal bit of time with governors just to catch up and discuss and, you know, get to know each other. And I think it was quite inspiring for some of the people there, because there were a few people kind of saying, oh, I kind of wish we had that you know, in our team. So I think that might be something that they take back. And I sort of mentioned how in some ways it's been an improvement, certainly for me being on the East Coast. It's been great to be able to connect with people all across the county, you know, and do the meetings this way. So I felt it was a really positive experience. But I'll summarise it as well on the forum so people can actually go back and have a look when there's more time.
Thanks, Millie, because again, it was split between, it was only the deputy and the lead governor that were able to attend these, and I went on the first day, which was more of the lead governors, and I don't think I had the same experience as Millie. The lead governors seemed to be very they had a lot more board chat and conversation, and the lead governors had lots more weekly conversations within the board and more links with, and they had lots more governor round robins. So they had lots more connections directly with the governors. So some of them were for bigger trusts or from bigger trusts. And they were saying some of the issues that they had was, excuse me, one of the main things was that they were having to use Teams. Why couldn't they use Zoom? So Zoom, you could get loads of people on. Whereas Teams you could only get up to 9 on. And somebody said, well, actually, it wasn't a national directive. You could use Zoom, and Zoom had been, in the early days, was not as easy to use. I don't know whether it was the ease or whether it was the credibility, I'm not sure, but there was a bit of discussion around that. And there was, I don't think we had as much conversational and like now we're seeing at least 9 people together. I don't know about you, Millie, but I was sat with just myself, and it was almost like one other person on the screen. So did you see a lot of other people, Millie?
I did. The only thing I felt with the event, and I did mention this in their survey because they gave some feedback, it was very much, because what I find goes so well in these meetings is we're all discussing, it's all open to all of us. It was very much, we listened to what the speakers had to say, and there was a little bit of opportunity for discussion at the end. I think it would be nice to perhaps have more meetings where kind of, you know, nationwide governors can kind of interact a bit more, and have a bit more open discussion. So I did suggest that to them, because I felt the governors in the meeting did want to talk to each other a bit more. I think that's what we really would have liked to have done, but it was mostly focused on listening to the discussion, the presentation was very interesting, and I feel I learned a lot from it. But I think had there been more discussion between governors, that might have been a positive. So I have fed that back to them.
I think I did as well, Millie, because it was very much, it was being spoken and delivered to, rather than having that communication and, you know, having some sort of conversation. And there was absolutely no connectivity. So I have no clue who I was speaking to, from where. So I'm only assuming from the way the conversation went that I was more likely, especially hearing from you now, that I was more likely to be speaking to more lead governors through the conversation that was coming back in, and how things were being framed and phrased. So yeah, I think, and my feedback as well. So but I think that Daniel's got his hand up. Do you want to come in on that one, Daniel?
No, sorry, I forgot to take it away.
I think I know we are literally 2 minutes over time. So I've done reasonably well, haven't I? We've had a lot of information thrown at us. And I know some people had to go before 12, which is absolutely fine. Karen's got a suggestion.
It was just going back to Millie's earlier point about feeding back. Can I suggest that you use the Governor's activity log that's presented to the Council of Governors in July? It was requested by the governors that was reintroduced on that log, and it wasn't just, and I think it was Millie that you actually suggested it, that actually it's not just a list of events and who attended, but actually that's your opportunity to provide feedback to your colleague governors. So that might be a useful vehicle, Millie.
Yeah. And I think, seeing as how we're out of time, we don't seem to be able to have the conversation. What I'm going to make a suggestion is that we, as Jackie pointed out, with a cup around the cooler is very much, it is more informal, but we do end up talking business. And I would like to have a more formal invite to our governors to say, please come in and have, after today, make some suggestions as to who you would like to see come forward to the next rep meeting. We've had a really full agenda today, and I think we've had some real quality information given to us by both Sarah and by Tracy, as well as, Linda's updated us. And, there's been a lot of interaction with our governors, etc. So in many ways, I know the cuppa by the cooler is not formatted in any way, but it has some relevance in how, we interact with each other. And I would love us to have another half an hour now to do that conversational. But I think if you're in agreement around now, is that we can take this and have, if Sam can put something out officially to all governors, if you're all in agreement with that. Paul, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I just caution about how that cup around the cooler develops. It's really important that it's not a place that where business is being done. I appreciate having the conversation and the connections is absolutely, and that was the original intent.
Yeah.
But there was a reference earlier on after Trace's input that this conversation could carry on around the cup around the cooler, and it can't, because it's not a public meeting and it's not sort of hooked into our formal ways of being. So I just wanted to make sure that, just to caution that it doesn't start to become something that actually is sitting outside of the formal structures we've got for governors to actually carry out their business. I don't want to stop people having that kind of conversation, the getting to know one another bit, and the relationship bit, because I know from hearing from governors how useful that's been, and I think it's just worth being mindful of that in relation to the other more formal pieces we've got. As Millie says, it's a meeting that isn't a meeting.
Yeah, and that's cool, and I'm cool with that. But where do we end up now on here? That was my problem on here, is that the conversational part of our meeting was right at the very end. So this rep meeting has become valuable in the sense that, we've got people in to give us the information that we want and we need, but actually we also need the conversational aspects to gain the knowledge of what people want to bring to the table. So how do we then have those meetings? Because last time that was where we went over. We started a conversation that then developed, and Jane at the very last minute said, well, why don't you bring Sarah in from La? And that, everybody said that Sarah's presentation was absolutely invaluable. And I've had a pre-meeting with both Jazz and Tracy, and to invite them into this meeting. So I can do some of it outside to invite into a meeting, but to bring to the governors. But where do we get the conversational part? So do we have another formal, informal? Does that make sense?
Pauline, could I just come in quickly?
Yeah, of course you can.
On the back of what Paul's just said, I think what you've just outlined, I think it's really important that we actually perhaps revisit the planning of this meeting's agenda. I think it's about the structure and the order and the content and the quantity of the content of the agenda. I think, no disrespect to Sarah and Tracy at all, because they've both provided excellent presentations, which everyone's really appreciated. But I do think that 2 presentations for 1 meeting is too much. I think that needs to be limited to 1 in a meeting. And I think Paul's comment that he's put in the chat about making sure that some of what you consider to be the really important piece, which is about the conversation, actually needs to perhaps be brought to the front end of the agenda, so that it doesn't get missed off and you're not running out of time. But I think this is about some really careful planning, and I would say that it's not been helped because you didn't have a meeting in March. Nobody could control that particularly, and I think it's just you're playing a bit of catch up, and everyone's desperate to get everything on the agenda because it's the first opportunity. So I think things will start to settle again. But I do think we need to be very mindful about the agenda.
Yes, and I think you're right, Karen. And I think maybe if we can, when we look at the agenda, you know, we in some ways we duplicate. So with the greatest of respect, the iLog comes to here, but then it also comes to Council of Governors.
Absolutely.
So how can we fine tune it so that we're not duplicating and having two things coming to the same, you know, if we need to, we can bring it to our attention, or if there's something really specific, but actually our business should be separated out into what needs to come here and what needs to come to council.
Yeah, I think we need to have some further conversations, and I'm sure that I'll follow this up with Sam and Peter, and I think we just need to have a further conversation about, you know, just really looking at what this committee needs to do. And your point is a well-made one, the iLog, you know, about where that sits. Both meetings are held in public, so we're not actually, if it was to come to this meeting and not the full council meeting, we're being fully transparent, you know, and that's important. So it's not being discussed in a private environment. So I just think, we need to have give it some more thought.
Yeah, and I mean, today, if there were public here, they would be, you know, would they be able to be feeding into that, or they're sitting and listening? You know, they're sitting listening and hearing what we do, and so we've got to, in effect, you know, make that interesting for our public. You know, so if we're having a conversational point around the fact that, you know, what is it that you would like? What do you need? What is it that will interest you as governors? And we're having that conversational point that is maybe interesting to our public that are sitting there or listening in, that then they will feed back in more than going, well, what's the iLog? Or what's this? So we start to have more of a connection with our public as well as our governors and our business. So we are starting to connect in a more coordinated way. And I utilise the cuppa by the cooler because we don't do business there, Paul. We chat, but things fall out of it that we then Sam takes away and does business with, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you, Don?
Yeah, it's very much that, Paul. That there isn't business per se,
No.
but it'll be we're having just a discussion amongst governors that are in the meeting, and an iLog may crop up from it. So that's where the business element comes into it. That like the ideas and suggestions that have come through from May onwards, from when the Cuppa by the Cooler started, all those iLogs that have come in have literally been generated by governors having a chat, like they would do either like we have our pre-meeting before going into is it the COG. So it's exactly the same. It's just that we're doing it more frequently, which is allowing the governors to form a better relationship with each other, so that they understand how they bounce off each other. So when it comes into the meetings, it's not just 4 times a year that they see each other. They're seeing each other once a week, and it's forming much better relationships, which means as a council, we are going forward with almost one voice, because we've almost had this offline, you know, it's cropped up. Okay, that sounds like a great suggestion that we can put forward. Let's raise an iLog, and then we're almost having the opportunity to collaborate as governors to make sure that there's not 16 iLogs all coming in about the same thing. We can collaborate one question with lots of input from different governors to say, do you know what, that's a really good idea, but I think from my constituency of volunteers or East Lindsey or carers or service users, this needs to feed into that one question. So that's the business element, and that's about as much as business gets discussed. But other than that, you know, it's a bunch of people that have one solid interest, which is to make sure that the trust has the ability to move forward and be the best that it can.
And to put it into context, Paul, was it last week? I think it was last week. The conversation was, somebody said, how can we have a sensible conversation when Pauline is sitting there with a gold wig on? So if you think that is doing business, I have not had my gold wig on today.
Fact.
So no, it is, and one of the things that for me it was about sort of, you know, we can have fun together when we do business together. We start to understand each other a lot easier and a lot better. So the reality of the combination is there is a great huge difference between cuppa by the cooler and sitting in a formal meeting. And this meeting I think is more conversational than our COG meeting. You know, COG meeting is very, very straightforward, and you know,
Pauline, I hate to really stop you in full flow,
yeah,
but are we able to kind of wrap this meeting up, and
we
then
are.
those that need to kind of move on can then move on, and then if those want to stay behind and we continue this as like a sidebar chat, then yeah,
Anybody's free to go at anybody's free to go at any time, Don.
I fully understand that, Pauline, but at the moment this is still, we haven't closed the meeting off yet, so this is what we're discussing now is still forming part of the meeting, if that makes sense.
It is, absolutely, because no, I haven't closed the meeting, you're absolutely right. Because again, it's just finishing that part off with regard to where we're at with the with the conversational part. So we have at least had a conversational part to at the end of our meeting, and if there's any other business, Paul, Karen, Sam,
no,
George, Don,
no, not for me.
is anybody else around? I don't know. Is anybody else?
Nothing from me.
No.
No. Okay. Right. Thank you all for attending. And again, if anybody does want to stay around and talk further, I think Sam, can you put that out as I asked for, to see if anybody's got any suggestions for next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I put in the chat bar anyway, Pauline, that we've got a Recovery College presentation coming in, because obviously we've had to forward plan all the suggestions.
Yeah.
And with the 6-month break, it's kind of skittled into time frames. So we have at least got the Recovery College coming in anyway to do a presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have from the last conversation, we had a few lining up. Anyway, so.
Yeah.
But thank you, everybody, and stay safe and stay well. And we might be in together one day soon, maybe.
Thank you, Pauline.
Nodding.
You're not too sure.
Don't know where, don't know when.
All right.
Thanks,
bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.